My own family betrayed me, voting me out of the company I built from nothing. They thought they had everything, but I was about to show them that some empires are built with a hidden kill switch. The air in the conference room was so cold it felt like it was actively sucking the warmth out of my skin. It was a stark contrast to the name of the meeting my brother Mark had put on the calendar. Family Huddle. Huddles are supposed to be warm, collaborative. This felt like an execution. Mark sat at the head of the long mahogany table, the one I'd picked out myself when we first leased this office space. My sister Sarah was to his right, her fingers steepled, looking at me with a pity I didn't ask for and certainly didn't want. And across from them sat my Uncle David, the man who gave me my first $1,000 loan with a pat on the back and a "Go get 'em, kid." Now he wouldn't even meet my eyes. He just stared intently at a spot on the polished wood. "So," I started, trying to keep my voice light, "what's the big emergency? Did the server crash again?" I looked at Mark, expecting him to launch into some technical problem. Instead, he slid a single-page document across the table toward me. It was printed on heavy cardstock, like a morbid invitation. "We're enacting a change in leadership, effective immediately," Mark said, his voice devoid of any emotion. He sounded like he was ordering a pizza. I laughed. A short, sharp, disbelieving sound. "A change in what?" "Mark, this is my company. I started it in my garage." "What are you talking about?" "We're talking about the good of the company," Sarah chimed in, her voice syrupy sweet. "You're brilliant. You are. You had the vision, but you're not a manager. You're burnt out, and your decisions have become erratic." Erratic? My erratic decision last month had landed us our biggest client to date. My jaw tightened. "This is insane. You can't just—" "We can," Mark interrupted, tapping the document. "When you brought us on as partners, you gave us each a 20% stake. Uncle David has his 10%. That's 50%. You retain 50%. But the company bylaws, which you signed, state that in the event of a leadership dispute, a majority vote of the partners can force a restructuring. We're voting—" My blood ran cold. I looked from my brother's smug face to my sister's feigned sympathy. Then I turned to my uncle, my last hope. "Uncle David," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "Don't do this." He finally looked up, and the sadness in his eyes was almost worse than their coldness. He gave a slow, deliberate nod. "It's for the best, son. The company has grown beyond you." And just like that, they raised their hands, 3 hands against me. In the blink of an eye, I was voted out of my own life's work. They didn't fire me, of course. That would be too messy. They offered me a generous severance and the title of Founder Emeritus, a meaningless plaque to hang on my wall while they ran my company into the ground. I was too stunned to even fight. I just stood up, pushed my chair in, and walked out without another word. I drove home in a daze, the world blurring outside my car window. I stumbled into my home office, the very room where I'd spent countless sleepless nights building this thing from nothing. I sank into my chair, staring blankly at the dark monitor of my computer. My company, my dream, my family, all gone in a 10-minute meeting. Hours passed. The sun went down. I didn't move. Then a small, unassuming ping echoed in the silent room. An email. I almost ignored it, but some morbid curiosity forced me to wake the computer. The screen flickered to life, showing my inbox. It was an email from a name I hadn't seen in years. My old college professor, Dr. Albright, the man who first told me my business idea was genius. The subject line was just 2 words: contingency plan. My brow furrowed in confusion. I clicked it open, my heart starting to pound for the first time since the meeting. The body of the email was short, and the first line made the air leave my lungs. It said, "I hope you never have to read this, but if you do, it means your family activated the Goliath Clause." Goliath Clause. The name echoed in my mind, a phrase I hadn't thought of in almost a decade. It came from a conversation I'd had with Dr. Albright when I was just a starry-eyed kid with a groundbreaking algorithm and no business sense. I was about to officially incorporate, to bring Mark and Sarah on board. "Family is the best foundation," I'd told him. He'd smiled a sad, knowing smile. "And sometimes it's the heaviest anchor," he'd replied. He was my mentor and a pro bono advisor, and he insisted on helping my lawyer draft the corporate bylaws. He added one specific, non-negotiable section. He called it the Goliath Clause. "Just in case your David ever needs a slingshot," he'd said with a wink. At the time, I thought it was just him being an overly cautious academic. I trusted my family. My hands trembled as I scrolled down, reading the rest of the email. It wasn't long. Dr. Albright explained it all with chilling clarity. He'd structured the company in a way I never fully understood. The company, Innovate Dynamics, was a shell. It owned the office, the computers, the brand name, but it didn't own the one thing that mattered: the intellectual property. The core code, the revolutionary algorithm that was the engine of our entire business, was held in a separate private trust that he had set up for me. That trust licensed the IP to Innovate Dynamics under a single unbreakable condition: that I remained in a controlling leadership position. The Goliath Clause stated that if I were ever removed from my post by a majority vote of the other partners, the licensing agreement would be instantly and irrevocably terminated. My family hadn't just voted me out of my job. They had voted to turn their multi-million-dollar company into a worthless husk. They just didn't know it yet. A wave of vertigo washed over me. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was holding the slingshot. The email continued, "They will have 24 hours from the time of the vote before the license revocation fully propagates through the servers and every single one of your clients' systems goes dark. They have unknowingly started a doomsday clock." My breath hitched. All our clients, the hospital networks, the logistics firms, the security companies, their systems would all crash. It would be a catastrophe. But then, a final paragraph in the email gave me the path forward. Attached, you will find the incorporation documents for a new company, Phoenix Holdings. The trust has already assigned the IP license to this new entity. It just needs your signature to be activated. You can save your clients. You can save your work. You just can't save your family. I downloaded the attachment, my cursor hovering over the digital signature line. I could rebuild. I could take every client, every contract, and leave them with nothing but an empty office and a massive lawsuit. The power was intoxicating, a roaring fire in the frozen landscape of my shock. As I moved the mouse to sign my name and reclaim my life, a notification popped up in the corner of my screen. It was an automated alert from Mark's calendar. He had just scheduled a press conference for 9 a.m. tomorrow. My heart stopped when I read the title. It read, "Innovate Dynamics announces strategic merger with North Corp." North Corp. The name hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind from my lungs. They were the vultures of the tech world, a monolithic corporation known for acquiring innovative startups, gutting them for their patents, and laying off everyone who built them. I'd personally sat in a meeting with their CEO, Victor Sterling, 6 months ago. He'd offered to buy me out, sliding a 7-figure offer across the table. I told him my company wasn't for sale. It was my legacy, not a lottery ticket. He'd smiled, a thin, predatory expression. "Everything is for sale, son," he'd said. "It's just a matter of finding the right price and the right seller." He'd found them, Mark, Sarah, and Uncle David. This wasn't a desperate move to save a struggling company. This was a premeditated, backstabbing cash-out. They saw the 7 figures Victor offered, and I was the only thing standing in their way. My burnout and erratic decisions were just the excuses they'd manufactured to justify their greed. The coldness in the conference room suddenly made perfect, sickening sense. It wasn't a family huddle. It was a business transaction. I was the asset being liquidated. A new kind of anger, cold and sharp as glass, cut through my shock. My family wasn't just incompetent, they were malicious and stupid. They were about to stand on a stage and announce the sale of a company whose core asset was set to evaporate in less than 24 hours. The public humiliation would be biblical. North Corp's army of lawyers would descend upon them, suing them for fraud, for misrepresentation, for every penny they had and every penny they hoped to get. They had eagerly walked into a bear trap of their own making. My first instinct was to let it happen, to sign the Phoenix Holdings documents, grab some popcorn, and watch the live stream of the press conference as their entire world imploded. It was what they deserved. But then I thought of the clients, the hospital that used our software to manage patient data, the shipping company that relied on our logistics grid. They didn't deserve to be collateral damage in my family war. Dr. Albright's words came back to me. You can save your clients. He was right. That had to be the priority. But saving them didn't mean I had to save my family from the consequences of their own treason. I looked at the digital signature line for Phoenix Holdings, then back at the press conference notification. A plan began to form in my mind, a reckless and theatrical one, but the only one that felt right. They wanted a public spectacle? I'd give them one they would never forget. I wasn't just going to take back my company. I was going to do it on their stage, under their lights. My hand, now steady, moved away from the signature button. That could wait. First, I had another matter to attend to. I picked up my phone, my fingers flying across the screen as I pulled up a familiar number. A clock in the corner of my monitor ticked down. 23 hours and 14 minutes until the Goliath clause fully engaged. The phone rang twice before he picked up, his voice the same calm academic tone I remembered so well. Professor Albright, I said, my voice low and steady. It's time to talk about David and Goliath. The phone call with Dr. Albright was short and strategic. There was no time for sentiment. We spent the night preparing. He marshaled legal resources while I drafted communications to every one of our clients, ready to be sent at a moment's notice. I didn't sleep. I just watched the clock on my screen count down, a silent companion to the cold fury burning in my chest. When 9 a.m. rolled around, I wasn't watching a live stream from my office. I was standing in the wings of the auditorium they'd rented, a press pass that Dr. Albright had arranged hanging around my neck. I watched as my brother Mark stepped up to the podium, beaming. He looked every bit the triumphant CEO, his suit probably costing more than my first car. To his left, Sarah preened for the cameras, and to his right, Victor Sterling, the North Corp CEO, looked on with the placid expression of a python that had just swallowed a goat. "It is with immense pride," Mark began, his voice echoing through the hall, "that we announce a new era for Innovate Dynamics, an era of bold new leadership and strategic synergy. We have reached an agreement to merge with North Corp, securing a future that the company's previous, more stagnant leadership could only dream of." The dig was clear. The reporters scribbled in their notepads. My family's betrayal was now being broadcast as a success story. My uncle sat in the front row, looking relieved, a man who thought he'd just dodged a bullet and made a fortune. They had no idea they were all standing on a trap door. As Victor Sterling took the stage to spout platitudes about innovation and shareholder value, I made my move. I didn't storm the stage. I just walked calmly to the side steps, where a technician, a young man I'd hired myself 2 years ago, saw me. His eyes widened, but a quick, subtle nod from me was all it took. He handed me a live microphone without a word. I stepped out from the wings just as Sterling was finishing. The gasp from the front row was audible. Mark's face went white. Sarah looked like she'd seen a ghost. Uncle David just stared, his mouth hanging open. "Apologies for the interruption, Victor," I said, my voice calm and amplified, cutting through the stunned silence. "But you seem to be under a grave misapprehension." I turned to the baffled crowd of journalists. "My name is Michael Vance. I am the founder of Innovate Dynamics, or rather I was. As of yesterday afternoon, my family here voted me out." A murmur went through the crowd. This was getting juicy. Mark started to sputter. "Security! Get him out of here!" I held up a hand. "No need. I'm just here to make a public service announcement. You see, when I founded my company, I was given some very wise advice. A contingency plan was put in place. It's called the Goliath Clause. I let the name hang in the air. It stipulates that the core intellectual property, the very algorithm that makes this company valuable, is held in a private trust. That trust licenses the IP to Innovate Dynamics under one condition: my continued leadership. Yesterday, at 3:15 p.m., my partners terminated that condition. I looked at my watch, which means, as of right now, the license is revoked. Congratulations, Victor. You've just paid a 9-figure sum for a brand name, some office furniture, and a handful of very confused employees. You don't own the engine. You just bought the car's empty shell. Chaos erupted. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and Victor Sterling's face contorted into a mask of pure rage as he turned on my brother. Mark and Sarah were frozen, their moment of triumph turning into a public execution. I turned and addressed the main camera, speaking directly to my clients. "To all Innovate Dynamics clients, your service will not be interrupted. The IP has already been reassigned to my new company, Phoenix Holdings. You will be receiving an email shortly. We look forward to continuing our work together." I placed the microphone on the podium, turned my back on the ruin of my family's greed, and walked out of the auditorium, not looking back. The sirens I heard in the distance weren't for me. They were for the smoldering wreckage I'd left behind. My company was dead. Long live my company.